Story 1.
I'd been delivering food for a while now, just trying to make ends meet. One chilly, dark evening, I got an order from Mr. Smith. Sounded like a regular gig, nothing out of the ordinary, so I hopped in my motorbike and headed to the address. Little did I know, this delivery would be far from ordinary. The GPS led me to this quiet suburban neighborhood, rows of houses, all looking almost identical. I pulled up in front of Mr. Smith's place, a two-story, average-looking home. At first, I didn't notice anything strange. I grabbed the bag of food and rang the doorbell. A man in his 40s, maybe, answered the door. He looked perfectly normal, nothing unusual about him. "You must be Mr. Smith," I said, trying to be friendly. He nodded and took the food, handing me the money. That's when I noticed the first weird thing. He had this strange glint in his eye, like he was hiding something. And then, as I looked past him into the house, I saw it. The boarded-up windows. Every single window on the ground floor was covered with plywood, making the place seem like a fortress. I mean, who does that? Mr. Smith thanked me and closed the door quickly, like he didn't want me to see inside. But curiosity got the best of me. As I turned to head back to my motorbike, I couldn't help but notice the strange noises coming from the house, muffled cries for help, like someone was desperately trying to get my attention. My heart started pounding. Something wasn't right here. I stood there for a moment, torn between leaving and investigating further. Those cries for help grew louder, more desperate. It was like a nightmare, and I couldn't just drive away and ignore it. So, I decided to walk around the house, looking for a way in. Maybe there was a back door or a window that wasn't boarded up. I tried the back door, but it was locked. I could still hear those cries for help, but I couldn't figure out where they were coming from. Then I spotted a basement window with a small gap in the boards. I peeked inside and saw a dimly lit room with a few people huddled together, looking terrified. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Mr. Smith wasn't just some regular guy. He was holding these people against their will. He'd ordered the food for them, not as a meal, but as a cruel joke. My stomach churned, and I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just walk away from this. I sneaked back to my motorbike and grabbed my phone. I dialed 911, my fingers trembling as I told them about the situation. They assured me that they'd send someone right away. While I was on the phone, I noticed Mr. Smith peeking through the curtains, probably realizing that something was up. I had to make a choice. Do I confront Mr. Smith or wait for the authorities to arrive? Confronting him seemed dangerous, but I couldn't just sit idly by while those people were suffering. So I decided to go back to the front door, knock loudly, and confront him head-on. As I approached the front door, my heart was pounding like crazy. I knocked loudly, and Mr. Smith opened the door, looking nervous. I asked him about the cries for help, pretending like I didn't know what was going on. He stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Just then, I heard sirens approaching. The police had arrived. I stepped back, allowing them to take control of the situation. They entered the house and found the terrified captives. Mr. Smith was arrested, and I gave my statement to the police, explaining how I stumbled upon the situation. It was a horrifying experience, one that still haunts me to this day. I never expected such a creepy and scary ordeal while delivering food. It's a stark reminder that sometimes, the most ordinary-looking places can hide the darkest secrets.
Story 2.
I had just wrapped up another grueling day at the office. It was past midnight and I was dead tired. Living alone in my small apartment had its perks, but on nights like this, it felt kind of lonely. My stomach grumbled, and I decided to treat myself to a late-night meal delivery. The thought of a hot, greasy burger sounded like the perfect end to my day. I grabbed my phone and placed an order. The estimated delivery time was 30 minutes, so I decided to read my book. As I was about to open the book, my phone buzzed with a message. It was the delivery guy, informing me that he was outside. That was fast. I left my book and hurried to the door. When I opened it, I was met with a tall, lanky guy in a delivery uniform. He held a bag with my food and gave me a smile that was just a little too wide. "Hey there, Sophia," he said, as if he already knew my name. "Hi," I mumbled, suddenly feeling a bit uneasy. Maybe it was the late hour, or perhaps his overly friendly demeanor, but something felt off. I tried to brush it off as me being paranoid and handed him the money for the food. But instead of leaving, he looked down at the bag and said, "You know, we've had some mix-ups lately. Mind if I come in and double-check your order? It won't take long, I promise." I hesitated for a moment, thinking about the safety of letting a stranger into my dimly lit apartment. "Well, can't you just check it here? I'm kind of in a hurry," I said. He insisted, "It'll just take a second, I promise. I want to make sure everything's perfect for you." Still feeling a little awkward, I opened the door wider, allowing him to step inside. I decided to keep a safe distance from him, hovering near the entrance. He placed the bag on the kitchen counter and began unpacking the contents. He seemed overly meticulous, double-checking each item, which only made my unease grow. As he rummaged through the food, I noticed something odd about him. His hands were trembling, and his eyes darted around the room as if he were looking for something other than my order. My heart began to race, and I took a step back. "I think everything is fine," I stammered, trying to sound calm. "You can go now." He didn't respond, continuing to inspect the food as if he hadn't heard me. It was at that moment that a feeling of dread washed over me. This situation was spiraling out of control, and I needed to act fast. I reached for my phone, planning to call the police. But as I did, he turned to me with a sinister grin. "Sophia, you should be more careful letting strangers into your home." I froze. How did he know my name? My mind raced, trying to come up with a plan to escape this situation. I glanced at the front door, but he was blocking my way. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, I darted toward the kitchen, knocking the bag of food off the counter in the process. The clattering of containers hitting the floor echoed through the apartment. I grabbed a knife from the drawer, not knowing if I'd ever need it, and backed myself into a corner. The delivery guy's grin faded as he looked at the knife in my hand, and he began to step cautiously towards the door. "I didn't mean any harm," he stammered. "I'll just leave." I didn't let my guard down until he was safely outside. I locked the door behind him, my hands still trembling. It was only then that I realized the severity of what had just happened. He knew my name. He had been in my apartment, and his intentions were far from innocent. I called the police and recounted the terrifying experience. They assured me they would investigate and advised me to be cautious in the future. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying the events in my head, grateful that my instincts had kicked in just in time to prevent a potential nightmare. The incident served as a stark reminder of the world's dangers, especially for someone living alone. From that day on, I made sure to double-check my safety measures and never let a stranger into my home, no matter how friendly they seemed. The simple act of ordering food had turned into a harrowing ordeal, one that would haunt my nightmares for a long time to come.
Story 3.
I remember it was a cool autumn evening when I decided to order food from the new restaurant that everyone was raving about. The place had just opened, and it was known for serving exotic dishes that you couldn't find anywhere else in town. I thought it would be a nice treat for myself after a long week at work. So I pulled up their website and scrolled through the menu. They had all sorts of strange and intriguing options, from sautéed insects to mysterious meats I couldn't even pronounce. I decided to go for something less extreme and settled on a dish called Mystery Meat Stir Fry. It sounded interesting, and I was feeling a little adventurous. I placed my order and eagerly waited for the delivery to arrive. The restaurant promised fast service, and they weren't kidding. In no time at all, there was a knock on my door, and there stood the delivery guy, holding a bag with my meal. He handed it over with a polite smile, and I could tell he was just as curious about the food as I was. I set the bag on the table and opened it up. The aroma that filled the room was odd and unsettling. It was a strange mix of spices and something else I couldn't quite place. I scooped some of the dish onto my plate and took a cautious bite. The taste was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, and not in a good way. It was bitter, with an underlying sweetness that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to shake off the strange feeling, thinking it might just be a matter of acquiring a taste for it. But as I continued to eat, the unsettling feeling grew. It was as though something about the food was off, and I couldn't put my finger on it. That's when I noticed a small piece of paper hidden within the meal. I unfolded it, and my heart skipped a beat as I read the chilling message. "You've tasted the secret. Now, follow the trail to uncover the truth." I was both scared and curious. What was this supposed to mean? Was it some sort of prank by the restaurant staff? My initial thought was to dismiss it, but my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to follow the mysterious note's instructions. The note led me to a series of cryptic clues hidden around my apartment. Each clue was more disturbing than the last, and I began to feel like I was being watched. I followed the trail outside, my heart pounding as I realized I was drawn into something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The trail led me to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. It was a place I'd heard stories about, a place where strange rituals were said to take place. I hesitated at the entrance, but the note's message echoed in my mind, urging me to uncover the truth. As I ventured deeper into the darkness, I heard eerie whispers and felt a chilling presence all around me. I finally reached a room that looked like an old kitchen. It was then that I stumbled upon the horrifying truth. The walls were covered with photographs of people who had gone missing in the city over the years. And in the center of the room, there was a massive pot bubbling with a thick, dark broth. It was filled with bones and fragments of what looked like human remains. I gasped, realizing that the secret ingredient in the restaurant's exotic dishes was something far more horrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. I had stumbled upon a nightmarish operation where innocent people had been turned into ingredients for the macabre menu. I was paralyzed with fear, but I knew I had to expose the truth. I quickly snapped photos of the horrifying scene and contacted the authorities. The restaurant was raided, and the sinister operation was shut down. I can't erase the nightmares that followed, the taste of that unsettling dish, and the horrors I had witnessed. The town was forever changed, and I had unwittingly become a part of a chilling journey that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The lesson was clear. Be careful what you order, because you never know what secrets might be lurking on your plate.
Subscribe for more videos.